Good evening, everybody. It is March 1st, 2023, and you are joining us for a City Council work session. This is a work session regarding our goals, but first we will begin with public comment on non-agenda items. If any member of the public wishes to speak to the City Council on any item not on the agenda, raise your hand on Zoom or come to the podium. Seeing none, we will close the public comment period and move on to our work session. As I said, this is a discussion regarding our goals and objectives for the year. I don't know, City Manager, if you'd like me to start or you to start. Okay. So we have had a few conversations about this, Council. Tonight, the goal is to get our goal list defined down to something that can be brought forward as an amendment in our March 7th meeting that is ready to go. So look at the, you all have two items in front of you printed out. The item, or the document that has one of three, I think we should stick to that item. That covers a few of the concerns raised at our last meeting, namely the missing environmental stewardship section has been added. As it sits, this is the document that would be brought forward as a recommended replacement to our previous table that is in the resolution. So we won't be doing any voting or any decision making tonight, but we can, of course, talk things out. As a final thought, I received no comments from the council before the deadline to make comments about the goal list. So to be honest, I'm a bit of a lack of where to go from here. I think Councilor O'Doherty.
I'd feel better if we went through the major topics. Let's see. I thought they were all written out like goal number and milestone number. Anyway, I'd feel good about it if we looked at one of these goals at a time and just look around and see if everybody thinks that is that what we want, or do we want to change anything? Like if we could go through it systematically, because I feel like that's what we did in past retreats. We got together at the end and looked at those. Okay. And I would feel better.
Does that work for the rest of council? We can cruise through these pretty quick, I expect. I'm going to go ahead and just start reading through them then one section at a time. Council, at the end of the section, we will discuss what we previously talked about. And if you're looking for, I'm just going to pull this up on the agenda. Okay, great. If you're watching this at home, you can find that in our cover sheet, or in our agenda, in the Agenda Center. You can find this document that we're reading from. The first section is infrastructure planning and investment. Under this goal, we will prioritize planning and reconstruction of public amenities, facilities, and rights of way to maximize safe access for persons of all abilities and ages. Increase public awareness about how property owners support accessibility for persons of all abilities. Work with the Disabilities Commission, Board of Health, and other interagency partners to improve physical access for differently abled persons of all ages. Improve robustness of the stormwater management system. Ensure non-motorized transportation options are integrated comprehensively into municipal and regional transportation systems. Continue grant seeking and aggressive investment in water, sewer, and street systems. Assess community connectivity options in an effort to ensure adequate broadband infrastructure to retain workforce and business. And that references Thrive Strategy 10. Council, any comments on our infrastructure planning and investment section? Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, so I don't see the word roads, but I know it's there.
Street systems is here.
Did I miss it?
Water, sewer, and street systems.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, so it will be noted.
I will shut up.
You are just fine. All right. Councilor O'Doherty.
Oh.
No, you're,
It occurs to me that the non-motorized transportation, by increasing options there, like if you narrow the part of the street that's for cars to make more room for bikes, maybe we would preserve our streets longer. I mean, that might help. I mean, we want to increase, I mean, after our discussion last night, it's really depressing because we're going to have some rain of money to even keep up with our roads. But it occurs to me that non-motorized transportation might be an integral part of protecting our roads, like if we can,
Sure.
as opposed to two competing needs.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Councillor Shumway, did you have a comment?
well, I brought this up, I think, during our retreat. I talked to the mayor of Lusk, and they were able to obtain, I think it's, and Lusk is small, they were able to get around, well, several $1 million for rehabilitation of sidewalks, streets, and gutters because they took it before, I can't remember, was it ARPA? Anyway, they took it before, who was it?
TAPS.
TAPS, yeah,
grants.
TAPS, and they said it's for handicapped, or not handicapped,
Yeah.
what is it?
ADA.
ADA.
Yeah.
And I think someone said that we're aware of that, but I don't know that we're getting,
Well, and Councillor, I think we have so far used that money for our trail systems, for Greenbelt and Spring Creek trails.
Okay.
I think is where we have
which is good, but
used that money.
perhaps it's time to
Sure.
we need to keep working on that, but we need to, prioritize. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, city manager, if you feel like that's a conversation that's included in these in these goals, rather. I know there is sort of investments in water, sewer, and streets with grants, but a conversation about where the council settles on our use of TAP funds might be in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, and I do recall that conversation, Mayor and Council, at the retreat. And you're correct, we have extensively used TAP funds over the years, but always for trails, walking trails, biking trails, those kinds of things. I do believe we can repurpose them toward maybe extending the roughly $500,000 we've been spending on like curb cuts and ADA access. But it's a conversation we would need to have with you all, if, where your priorities are for that funding, so.
Okay, thank you, city manager. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, when we say non-motorized, is an e-bike considered non-motorized? Is a scooter non-motorized?
When they were doing the area, what's it called, east of town? Pilot Hill. No e-bikes, nothing, even these, no e-bikes, nothing that has any kind of non-manual propulsion. So I guess it just depends on whose project it is, but within the city, I think we need to look at e-bikes and all of that stuff, but when you get out in the
And
place where
that's,
there's erosion, they're looking at it differently.
and that's my thinking, that we're saying ensure non-motorized transportation options. And I think we're kind of we mean bicycles, but on my trip into San Francisco, there's a tremendous amount of biking in the city, and bike lanes that are like roads. They're so utilized. But I would say about 70% of them are e-bikes. So then would that be considered motorized? And is there another word we should put in there other than non-motorized?
Vice Mayor, we may consider multimodal instead
Yes.
of non-motorized.
Two-wheel?
Could have three, or one, or wheelchairs.
Yeah, I don't think they want ATVs.
City Manager?
Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to offer a couple thoughts on this. I think Councilor Cumby's question is a good one. Traditionally, I don't believe in government speak when we say non-motorized, that includes e-bikes or scooters. And so when I use that word, I don't believe it encompasses those things, but I think it's a good question for you all to think about. If those are modes of transportation that are like small motors, but are maybe, have value as more energy efficient or something like that, maybe you want to think about how to integrate that. And then, Mayor, to your point about multimodal, unfortunately, in the West, we don't have really good multimodal transportation systems, but typically that's going to refer more to integrating, say, a street system with a rail network, with a bus system, and how you get individuals through motorized, large motor or small motor or non-motorized transportation to those big modes, the nodes, I guess I would say, the nodes of major bus or train or rail or whatever street systems. So that's how those terms are typically used. And I think it's a good question maybe for you to flesh out if scooters are something you want to be part of this, or e-bikes, which are becoming very, very popular. So I don't have answers,
Sure,
just more questions.
Yeah, and my sense is that the council could have a conversation regarding whether or not we will allow electric motored, bicycles and scooters and the like on our bike lanes, but they're either in the bike lanes or in the road. And so, I think the heart of this is that we want to make sure bike lanes are included in our transportation planning and infrastructure construction, not whether or not we include bicycles or whether we include electric bikes, right? Like, that's not necessarily the point, but maybe I'm missing something here. Who was next? Sorry. Aaron, Micah, Jane. Oh, Sharon. Micah, go ahead. I lost who was where.
I don't know if it makes sense to continue to think on that, but, if we could say something like ensure non-motorized transportation options were integrated in regional transportation systems. Now I totally forgot what I was going to say, sorry. While considering alternate modes of transportation or something like that. So it's like just kind of an addendum to that sentence. But perhaps it's not needed, but I also kind of worry if we're thinking about bike lane specific, that we do have in mind that we want to support, these other modes of transportation, that we're considering what is needed to incorporate those when also thinking about like bike lanes and that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. Who was next? Aaron? Sorry, Councilor Doherty.
I thought we could just substitute non-motorized with alternative transportation, because if you have a hoverboard or, we want to have paths for that. If someone is, somebody's riding a bicycle, but their partner's riding an e-bike, and, we want people to be able to use lower fossil fuel emitting or fossil fuel using transportation. Also, I feel like the wheelchairs and just other mobility devices. So would alternative instead of non-motorized do the trick?
It would for me. Councilor Pierce?
Yeah. Our police chief is here, and I'm just wondering if e-bikes, could they be ticketed for going, 35 and a 25? Can a bicycle be ticketed for going 35 and a 25? I guess my concern is, you've got old Jane pedaling without speeds or, along at 0 miles an hour or 2, and then you've got, could we be creating a very dangerous situation?
Through you, Honorable Mayor, yes, they can be ticketed. So we actually see it more frequently with stop signs, but they're subject to the same laws of the road any bicycle is, whether it's an e-bike or not. So they could be ticketed. And they can go fast. I don't know if that's a reason or not to use them. Yeah, I think there's a lot of positive benefits with them, especially for commuting in areas like this where you have high traffic around the college or even Wyotech. There's some benefits to them for sure, but they are subject to the same rules of the road as any motorized vehicle.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. All right, Council, let's try to keep ourselves to the goal, so we don't get too far flung. We will almost certainly be having a conversation forthcoming about whether or not e-bikes and scooters are allowed in our bike lanes. The goal will, I don't know if council has really settled on an opinion between swapping for alternative or adding, I didn't write yours down, Councilor Richardson, but it was adding sort of other options at the end. I don't know if one of those makes more sense to council, but I think either one accomplishes the intention. Councilor Shumway.
Our city manager sent us some really cool pictures. We probably ought to take a look at those. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 7 or 8 options that we ought to at least consider, which seem to be things that would be fit well into a bicycle lane.
Thank you, Councilor. Anybody else? Okay. We will move on from this section, leaving that one a bit ambiguous, but we can discuss that in detail between those two options on the 7th. Moving on to interagency collaboration. Item 1, sorry, these are not numbered. Continue to participate with the Albany County Mental Health Interagency Board to explore and develop community integrative programs to address mental health needs. Expand offerings within the drug and alcohol diversion program. Conclude growth strategy efforts with Albany County and adopt a joint intergovernmental agreement for growth management and planning, growth management planning, sorry. And that is the end of that section. Council, any comments here? Councilor Shumway, go ahead.
With this draft, we have not allocated any funds for any of this. I was wondering if that had been considered and where we would find the money to fund these areas of interest that we have. I just don't know what the cost would be. Mm-hmm. And if it's reasonable, of course we do it. If it's not reasonable, we probably need to back off.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor. I do believe some funding just came through at the state legislature for these type of programs. We'll have to follow. Councilor Somerville is probably in the know on that one, but I do think some just cleared some hurdles over there, so.
Mayor, if I could just add, so yes, and I'm getting that information to our city staff, but there'll be some options.
A lot of money or no? Some.
Some.
Okay. Seeing no other.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, thank you, Councilor O'Doherty. Go ahead.
Number 3, the third one in that list, we've already been funding, right? The interagency group.
That's correct.
And the growth plan. So there was an outside agency or whatever. We hired a consulting firm for that. The mental health board exploring, that's not a cost thing. It's participating with the mental health board to come up with programs. So that's not a cost thing necessarily. It's a volunteer, well, Councilor Cummings.
It was, that was initiated by the county and by the previous county attorney, and it is now proceeding and has developed considerably in the last 2 years. So some of the funding and the support necessary for that is coming out of the county attorney's office. And it also includes the law enforcement agencies are participating, and as well as the mental health agency. And they have been writing grants to support programs that are evolving out of this group, such as the co-responder model. So there is money and support and a city, county, law enforcement, mental health collaboration going on in this group. And it's been established for, I guess, about 4 years. Yes.
Counselor Shumway?
Just a question, drug forfeiture money, does that all go to the county?
I do not know. Does anyone know? Staff?
Mayor and council, insofar as I know, yes. However, there have been occasions when our agency, Chief, you can correct me if you feel differently, has had drug forfeitures, but they're much less frequent than the sheriff's department and what goes to the county.
Good question, Counselor.
It's been very rare, I guess, is what I would say, for the city.
As far as expand offerings within drug and alcohol diversion programs, I know some of it is us talking about, could we have the penalties for things like underage smoking? You know, instead of somebody is 19 years old and yet they're treated as a child, but they're also an adult. Could we have like the alternative sentencing options, stuff that we could do as a body, I think, or I don't know. I know that there's a lot smarter people than me working on such things. And since our city attorney runs the drug court for the county, it seems like we have some expertise locally.
I believe that is correct, Counselor Doherty. City Manager.
Mayor and council, if you'd like, I could share with you something that's pertaining to what you just said, Councilor O'Doherty, and pertaining to generally and broadly this goal for maybe expanding or diversifying that drug and alcohol diversion program. And that is that I think some of the councilors, but perhaps not all of you, are aware that the opioid national settlement did go through last year. And the city and county are recipients of settlement monies. So we actually met early this week to start thinking about, as part of our budget development process, how we would recommend to you all to proceed with those funds, which are segregated and must be used for certain purposes that could fall in line with this goal that you're adopting. So Bob, city attorney, myself, we started talking. We think we have a good approach that we'll bring forward that could touch on the diversion program, but could also look at some expanded community-wide programs that could utilize those funds to combat opioid use and effects in the community. So that's something that is very close to this goal, and we'll get to work on this year.
Thank you, City Manager. Any other comments on this section? Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, just, are they really restrictive rules?
Mayor and Councilor Pierce, they are fairly restrictive,
I would
yes.
think, yeah.
I don't want to share too much at this point because it's just such a concept, in its infancy. But in talking with our city attorney, who, as you said, does do work for the drug court and is a lot more conversant in opioid issues in the community. I've also spoken with Chief Brown and with Chief Johnson. We think that within those strict rules, we could probably develop some really great interagency programming as well as diversion type focused offerings. So
Good.
Yeah, we talked about obviously the county being a partner. They're also receiving some funds, although they're small, as I understand, compared to what the city will receive. And then maybe the school district being a really important partner too. So
Good news, anyway, something.
Councilor Doherty.
I thought our municipal judge had some ideas too. And this,
yeah, Councilor Doherty, we did also involve our court administrator, and we talked about the judge and how and where and when the judge would be maybe contributing to the ideas and concepts.
Good.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to the next section, city services and resident engagement. Implement a police and community relations board. Consider establishing a human rights commission with an overall streamlined structure for resident boards and commissions. Continue ERP project to modernize municipal business operations and process for more effective or efficient and effective public services. Implement strategies to raise awareness about the participation in matters being considered by the governing body. Establish a municipal volunteer program and consider smartphone apps and other means for making volunteerism with the city easier. Council, any comments here? Councilor O'Doherty.
I was just wondering if our police chief wanted to talk about community relations board ideas, and whether you think it's feasible. And, I mean, it was a goal last year, and we passed it. We're heading that way, or maybe our city manager.
Right. Mayor and Councilmember O'Doherty, yes, you will see that on your agenda literally the next 4 to 6 weeks, we believe. So, yeah.
Councilor O'Doherty.
And then I have another minor thing, is I think we ought to spell out what ERP is, just in case anybody in the public wants to figure out what this document is, that it's the migration to new software. Make that clear in our goals, like continue the migration of city operations software to whatever the new one's called. Does everybody like that idea? Spelling it out instead of just having ERP?
Yeah, government's full of these. Spelling them out's fine. Council, I'm curious, sorry, yeah, go ahead. Oh, thank you, City Clerk. I should be watching that better. Councilor Newman, sorry about that.
That's fine. I should have took my hand down. I was going to ask the police chief the same question, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And if I just move on without you saying something, just feel free to unmute and scream loudly into Zoom.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I got sick kids. I don't want to get anybody else sick, so.
Well, it's appreciated from here. I hope things get better.
Thanks.
Councilor Pierce?
Yeah, I'm wondering if, on that very first item, if we need to kind of restructure that sentence or maybe add another one, because I feel like that last part of the sentence, within an overall streamlined structure for resident boards and commissions. So I'm going to just hop on a little bit of a soapbox. You know, we have so many boards and commissions, and I think that's great. And we have a huge volunteer force that helps us out with the city. But I also feel like there is sometimes duplication with the county. And I think we could potentially do some mergers of some of our boards and commissions, and that's a huge project. I sat down, I don't know, a couple of years ago even, looking at all the boards and commissions in the county, what we have here in the city, and I just feel like we're exhausting our volunteers to some extent. And I just feel like maybe we could streamline that, and I don't necessarily think it may need a line of its own as opposed to an add-on line to this particular piece, if that makes any sense at all. And nor do I know if anybody really is kind of in agreement with that. I mean, I'm just going to throw it out there. So.
Councilor O'Doherty.
So are you saying that, Councilor Pierce, that you would just end with, consider establishing a human rights commission, which I think is something that Janine brought up many years ago, in terms of that if somebody violates your rights, no matter what department they work for in the city or whatever, you know, like, somebody should hear about it. But then, are you saying to put a period after commission and then start with capital streamline structure for boards and commissions?
A whole section is what I'm trying to think
of.
Counselor Richardson?
Thank you, Mayor. Would that then perhaps just move to interagency collaboration? Or do we not dive into that today and we figure that out on Tuesday?
Well, I mean, I think we could have the conversation time. We sure can't move anything.
Mayor, if we could just turn on our microphones.
Thank you.
as we're Speaking.
Thank you. Yeah, we can, I mean, we can have a conversation about moving it, I suppose. We just can't move it. So we can
Right.
wait or not wait. It would just get moved in this document before the meeting so the city manager can bring us a clean slate for that meeting. Counselor Doherty?
It sounds like might be a different thing, though, because not all the boards would necessarily connect with the county. So you're saying just a new line that's streamlined structure for boards and commissions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, and maybe that has some sort of a notation of potential duplication with the county, just an asterisk next to it saying, county board very similar, or has this title, or something, so we can see. And like I said, it's a huge project. I mean, we've got, Nancy, how many boards and commissions do we have? Like 40-ish? 50, I mean.
Off the top of my head, I can't give you a very good answer, but we do have several.
Yeah, and some are on that list, and some haven't met for a long time, and, I just feel like, man, we got a lot going on. And
Counselor Richardson and then city manager.
So whether it sits in city services or in interagency collaboration, perhaps just a new line item to like review and evaluate boards and commissions.
City manager?
Mayor, I was just going to remind you all that you did, I was trying to look it up, but I didn't look it up fast enough. You did adopt a resolution, maybe last month, where you reestablished your intergovernmental committees with the city and county. And it strikes me that if we wanted to Councilmember Pierce's suggestion, look at redundancy across the two governments, that committee, the sort of catch-all committee, sorry, I wish we had a better name for it, but that might be a great place to start a conversation like that, and maybe let that subcommittee of you and the Board of Commissioners flesh that out and bring forward some ideas.
Council, I don't know, so I like that idea of moving that into those committees for consideration. I'm a little uneasy with the word streamlined, just my take here, because streamlined indicates that we're going to be cutting things, right? Like we're removing things to make this a sort of faster ship. I don't know if that's the goal, and so that's the conversation I want to have. If duplication is the goal, maybe we need to have that to me is not about streamlining, that's about increasing sort of the, I don't know, I guess maybe what I would say is my interest in looking at our board structures is to ensure that the boards are functioning and they're doing the thing that we want them to be doing. I feel like boards tend to drift over time as makeups of boards change. Projects change, our intentions with each board may have changed. Certainly the mental health board was not working on what they're working on now 3 years ago, right? So maybe it's just not necessarily about streamlining, but it's just that we would like to have a conversation about the work of our boards. I don't know if that's favorable to council or not, but I think that would be a great opening for an intergovernmental committee to also consider duplication. Because I do think there is some probably value there, and it is largely, you're right, the same folks on everything. So, Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I agree with you, and I think that you cannot streamline something until you have reviewed and evaluated. And so we need to start with a good review and evaluation analysis, and then see what's needed, which is what you're saying. So I would like to change that word to review and evaluate, or evaluate, whatever.
Okay.
Mayor, just
City Clerk.
in response to Councilor Pierce's question, we have approximately 15 internal or joint powers boards, not counting all the other boards that you all liaison to as well.
And so that would be 15 boards that we have some control over and have sort of ability to change bylaws and things, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct, Mayor.
Okay. Any other, oh, city manager, sorry, I didn't see it.
Could I just ask for maybe Commissioner Richardson to restate what you said, and then I think I can, I'm trying to record the goal you want to add.
Maybe. To review and evaluate current boards and commissions, period. Period?
Period.
Period.
Simple.
Okay, that's easy, thank you.
Everybody feel okay? Straw poll. Vice Mayor? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are we ready to move on to another one under that? Are we still talking about review and evaluate, or that's done?
That feels done, but this is a bit of a free-for-all, so have at it.
Okay. Number 3, implement strategies to raise awareness. My question is, of whom? And by the governing body, my question is, which? Is it the city governing body? And the, are we wanting to raise community awareness? I think that's what that means, but it doesn't really say it, so.
Okay, anybody else? Councilor Shumway?
Well, I want to go to 4 and then we go back to 3.
Free-for-all, like I said.
I really like what we're saying, but I think we need to make it to where it's easy. If we're going to have volunteer groups, you know, looking for something to do, we have service groups, we have church groups, we have WyoTech, and the university has things like that. If we had a place where they could go and say, here are 50 different things that we could do, then I think you would get more volunteerism rather than just have them create in their own mind that they're going to go pick up trash at Labonte Park or something. So I would like it if somebody would just get together and say, we're going to have a place on our city website where we show, here are projects that we can do. The curmudgeons do things on a regular basis, but there's a lot of people that would come forward and just civic-minded people and say, we're going to bring 10 people to put mulch around trees at Washington Park because that's on the list. I like this because I think we've had hundreds and hundreds of volunteers in the community, and I'd like to get it to where they know, you know, their schedule can come in and do whatever, whenever.
Yeah, I think this is a great goal, for sure. I think this would be helpful, whether it's the smart, city clerk. Okay, thank you. Is that Councilor Newman?
Yeah.
Councilor Newman, do you have something to add here, and I'll just quit talking?
I was going to go back to 3, whenever we're ready to go back to that one.
You know what? Let's do it. I'm going to change my plan for the next category, but we're in deep now, so you just go ahead on number 3.
I'm kind of with the vice mayor on this one. It's kind of too generic for my liking as well, because are we considering the county commissioners as the governing body? And I know this is our document, but I think it should state something about that. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Maybe we just change governing body to city council. Councilor Richardson?
Number 4.
Back
Just
at
a
it.
minor edit that I just noted, other means instead of other mean for making volunteerism with the city.
Good catch. Vice Mayor?
Could we also add to raise community awareness? Because we're really wanting to reach out to the community so they don't feel lost. Okay.
Okay. Sorry that you're having to bounce around so much, city manager. I will get it together. Okay, anybody else? It's a test. Okay, we're going to move on to economic development then. This time, we're going to go through one at a time. All right, evaluate potential to transform the Snowy Range Road corridor to better capture and allow for expansion of tourism, of the tourism economy stemming from the outdoor recreation and to provide essential amenities to the neighborhood district. This would be referenced in the Thrive Plan, Strategy 13. Anybody have a comment here? Okay. Sorry, Counselor, turn your microphone on, please. All right, number 2 is initiate urban renewal redevelopment of city-owned property for housing and business expansion. This one is really just get our URA active. Okay. Explore housing approaches that provide smaller, affordable housing within intentional neighborhoods, planning and design. Examples include senior village, family starter homes, low-income, smaller homes. So continuing our housing efforts. Develop informational resources for developers about federal, state, and local building requirements, the demand for housing, and the direct partnership opportunities with the city, again referenced in Strategy 13 from Thrive. Okay, we're cruising. Improve communication with developers and contractors about changes made to municipal code and ensure planning and public works engineering provide information to private sector partners. This was discussed at the Ward 1 5th Tuesday recently. All right. Councilor Doherty.
Can I have some background on it?
Yes. So we had a member of the public mention that in the past, and I imagine this was when things were maybe a little smaller, but that basically you would hear from the code enforcement proactively in a, hey, this change is coming, use up all your nails that will now be against the rules or something of that sort, was kind of the approach they were making, and it was not nails, so I picked that one to be safe. But yeah, that's right. Yeah, use your T-locks. So yeah, I was really just hoping that the city could be more proactive in pushing out the changes to contractors, but also, developers and that sort of thing. Councilor Richardson?
I think he also mentioned that there was a, I don't know if it was quarterly meeting that they would have with like the city planning folks and developers would all come together to just kind of talk.
Yeah, and so not dissimilar to our tavern meetings that liquor license holders have. And there was value in that, I think, for them. So having that conversation, I think, is valuable. So, okay. And then finally, evaluate community needs for potential use for the available 7th penny tax, with a line drawn there in the middle. Okay. City manager, and then to you, Councilor Shumway, after the city manager.
Mayor, on the 7th penny goal, I actually had a question for the council. So there is actually 2 available local option taxes, as I understand. 7th penny, of course, has been an option for a number of years. There is also this municipal option tax that was authored by the legislature, 3-4 years ago, I think. And this came, I'm aware of it, but insofar as I know, no communities have pursued it around the state. This came up recently in a WHAM meeting where we were talking about some issues going on at the legislature this year. But anyway, it reminded me, and I thought, I should make you aware of that in case you're not, particularly some of you that are new, and ask if the goal is committed to look at the 7th cent, or if it would be open to looking at both or one, or figuring out which one would be a better priority, I guess. That municipal option tax is just new, so I just didn't know where it was at on everybody's radar.
City manager, my sense, and council, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think both would be worth looking into.
Okay. I agree. Would you like then to reword this a little bit to make it less specific?
Yes. Okay. No objections to that? Okay. All right. On to the final category. Councilor Shumway.
I want to go back for just a second,
You bet.
Because I haven't been a part of this housing conversation. I don't know how the city is going to be directly involved in creating smaller houses, affordable housing. We don't have contractors, we don't have subcontractors that work for the city. We don't have people that are for profit going out and creating this type of housing, nor do we have a program that I'm aware of, like Cheyenne Housing Authority, to where we offer something like this. I can see that we have some limited, but very limited properties available that we could stipulate. You can only build here if you do affordable housing. But most of our property goes for parking and parks. I don't know how we're going to go after this. We want to be construction friendly with everybody, but the ideas on how they're going to capture a market that's profitable for them is their concern. And even though we want to encourage it, I don't see how we're going to make this something that is other than just talking points.
Good question. I think, one of the conversations we've had in the past was about partnering in a public-private partnership with developers on city-owned land. I think maybe specifically North 4th Street, as that redevelopment occurs, would be a great candidate for that sort of public-private partnership. And then, because we would be the landowner, we'd be able to sort of stipulate some of those pieces that would remove it from the, I think that maybe the misconception by some that development code is what makes it, like the market sets the price, right? So there has to be some other conversation involved or other factor involved to reduce that price. So I think that's maybe what that's getting at, is that sort of city-owned land that is available for development. I think some of the land is not available, right, without pretty considerable infrastructure investment that makes it cost prohibitive right now. Yeah.
Just to follow up, we have encouraged people on the Turner track to do affordable housing and received a great deal of resistance. We don't have a lot of property that we can make available for smaller houses and affordable housing other than that 4th Street, which has been the concept that we've had since the thought was we're going to demolish that and make it available for that kind of housing. I hope we can find some more opportunities, but really I think it's driven by the people that are looking. There is our studies show that for retirement housing, affordable housing, and low-income housing, there's a huge market for it, but not for homes that are $400,000 and $500,000, that's what we're running into is the problem.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Gabriel, and then to you, Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think this initiated from the fact that the council a number of months ago passed, I'm trying to remember what the exact wording was, to allow multiple family housing in restricted zoning districts. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're talking about here, is to encourage maybe the planning department to come to council with some other options that we could look at to increase housing affordability and availability in the city.
Yeah, that's a great point, Councilor. Yeah, and that would be some of the accessory dwelling work that we did that your son mentioned with AARP. Some of that work has already been done, but I think there is a need to continue looking into it. I mean, I think there's more that we can do beyond sort of what I mentioned earlier, of just the partnerships. Councilor Pierce?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the ordinance and code revisions that we have done over the last couple of years gets close to making a tiny home okay, but I'm not 100% convinced that it actually is all real clear in our ordinances and codes and with planning. And maybe it is, it might be, because I know when we were having those discussions, it was said generally that this will allow, for a tiny home type neighborhood or something, or a tiny home community. But it would be nice to know if in fact that's really okay in the code. And it might be. I mean, it just could be me, not quite getting all the nuances, but it would be nice to know that.
Sure. Okay. Council, anything else on that section? Okay, we're going to move on to environmental stewardship. Final section that was missing before. So welcome back, environmental stewardship. Continue energy efficiency efforts and explore potential for larger scale solar projects on city-owned property. Okay. Engage county and school district partners to explore ways to reduce further waste coming into the landfill, including plastic bag reduction program and expanding composting. Okay. Conclude effort with Albany County to update aquifer protection strategy and establish city ordinances necessary to enforce the plan after it's adopted. Okay. Initiate consumptive use focused long-term operational agreements for city-owned Monolith and Bath Ranch properties. Okay. All right, Council. Oh, Councilor O'Doherty.
The Monolith and Bath, the consumptive use, I don't think we need to be that specific. I mean, we are hiring consultants to work on consumptive use, but we also, we're doing more, I mean, Darren is, about that. I mean, I just hear about it. Doing more with the ranches that'll expand opportunities for our community besides just the water. There's the historic value, there's the recreation value. So what if we said continue the the multi, consider all the multi-use, or I don't know how to say it, but Janine probably does.
Would we maybe just have some sort of goal to create the plan for the Bath Ranch property that would include the consumptive use plan, but also maybe, I don't know if that's too ambitious for this year, because we have to keep in mind that we also have that, obviously the consumptive use would be the first priority, right? Because that's the one that's going to dictate the water rights into the future. But how we use the recreational aspects, how we manage or coexist in the conservation aspects of that other piece of the Bath Ranch, those are all obviously priorities. And then who's going to lease it and for what? I think those all are important. So I don't know if that's too ambitious, city manager.
Mayor, we are updating the consumptive use plans this year. I was just looking, I think we've executed or going to execute the contract, I can't remember, but that will happen.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Is further planning for the ranches as far as the future use of the ranch, is that what you're asking about, Councilor?
Yeah, I was saying, because I know some of this stuff is already happening, exploring different opportunities for managing those ranches. Because, if we can, I know that's on Darren's radar about, that if we have this, then we could have maybe a boat ramp or some historical things, markers or something.
Okay.
So continue to explore the multiple resources available or something like that.
Okay.
Does anybody think that's a way to go?
I'm interested in knowing a little more about the direction we're headed with the Bath Ranch specifically, because that is obviously the new acquisition. The Monolith is a little bit stable. I would be curious about that, yeah. But I don't know if that's too ambitious to have that plan, I guess would be the question for the city manager that I have. And then Councilor Newman will be next.
So not only are the consumptive use plan for the Monolith being updated, but we'll also be requesting proposals for utilizing both properties, Councilor Doherty, and bringing those before you this year. And so consumptive use is always, as I think the mayor said, it's always our focus. But I'm drafting language trying to capture what you're talking about that would say, initiate consumptive use focused long-term operational agreements, which we'll do this year, for both properties, and continue to explore other community uses. Is that getting there?
That works for me.
Conservation.
Sure.
Sorry, like the fish
and
The
conservation.
fish passage thing, that's going to be pretty monumental.
Right.
That's very cool stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to go to Counselor Newman, who had his hand up on Zoom up and down a couple times. So if you still would like to add something, Counselor, go ahead.
No, it was just answered. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then Counselor Pierce, Counselor Richardson, did you have your hand up? Okay, Counselor Pierce, okay, and then to you, Counselor Shumway.
So, maybe I need to apologize because maybe I haven't been updating as well as I should or could have been. So partly my fault. But, given I've been the liaison to the committee for a while, and even in the early years on council, also the liaison, I feel like part of it is with this new acquisition, we've got so much cleaning up to do and things to take care of and road right-of-ways and all sorts of things that have been neglected for decades. And as much as I am in total agreement with looking at future uses, the ability to do what needs to be done occurs from like June to it's that hour and a half, and to get that over that huge amount of ground is daunting, and maybe that's why I don't know, but it's such huge opportunity, but such stuff. It has to be methodical, it has to be planned, and it has to be cleaned up, and buildings might need to come down, and safety issues are of concern, and that first and foremost goal is consumptive use for our municipal water, right? And then cleanup, right, and functionality and right-of-way and legal. I'm sure there's still, Janine can help me out, but there's probably many legal things kind of still blowing in the breeze out there. And so it's good and I'm excited, but holy crap, there's a lot of stuff to do. So when it comes to this bigger idea, I would ambitiously or somehow speculate, we're talking about 3-4 years down the road, given our hour and a half every year, right, to do these things. So it's great, and I know people are anxious, I know the community's anxious, man, we all want to put our fly rod out there and go catch a fish, right? All the fish that are going to be coming up the new, whatever that thing is called, but it's just like, it's a lot that needs to be done first. Safety, so anyway, that's
Great.
for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, thank you, Counselor, that is helpful. Vice Mayor? And then to you, Counselor Richardson.
No,
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Okay. I just want to dovetail onto what you're saying, and thinking about the presentation that we had about the work that's being done and the work that needs to be done. I look at that as conservation effort, that it is stopping erosion, it is reestablishing correct, appropriate water patterns, it's cleaning up the rivers. So really, it was let go for a while, and we are doing conservation at its very basic level, removing the weeds from the streams and those types of things. So I just wanted to say I see that as the initiation, the initial step of conservation.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Counselor Richardson?
I'm just curious if it's worth adding something about, so initiate consumptive use, focused long-term operational agreements, identify areas of rehabilitation and improvement, and then explore future opportunities, or does that need to be included, or is that already assumed in this process, Jane, of like what's already happening out there?
Well,
City Manager, do you have a thought on that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I'm just wondering if putting language in this piece that says that we need to identify areas of rehabilitation and improvement and needed improvement should be included, or is that already happening and so it's not necessary to even include in this language?
Sorry, I made you repeat that. Mayor, yes, that's, Darren and I just worked up the budget to allocate resources for that. So that's just part of ongoing management, is we're trying to identify where we need to do cleanup and how much it's going to cost and who we're going to pay to do it. Thank you.
Councillor Gabriel?
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Pierce, could you bring me up to speed? This is a little off topic, Mayor, but I'm curious. I know the board, the Monolith Board, was suspended for a while, correct? I mean, you didn't meet for a couple of months, or?
I don't think that's the case, and we typically only meet quarterly. We only meet quarterly anyway, and then I think we actually had some extra meetings because of the quarterly meeting schedule. And we're also in the process of redoing the bylaws. So, and that's probably with the attorney right now, I'm guessing, maybe?
Nancy and I were just emailing about that. I'm not sure, but I think it's probably really close to coming to council. The issue, of course, is the bylaws were written sort of specifically toward the monolith, and when we added the bath, we want to make sure they're adequate. So last I looked at that, Nancy, like right before the new year, it felt ready to go. So we'll figure out where that's at and get it in front of you guys.
Thank you, City Manager.
Yeah, I was just curious because I was thinking that the board had been suspended in anticipation of this update on the bylaws and so on. That's all I needed. Thank you.
I don't think there was any suspension. I just think it was the fact that it was quarterly.
Quarterly. Thank you.
So it seemed like it was a long time apart, but in reality, it's really not. Is that a fair?
That's my understanding as well, is that they've continued to meet. And we're just doing the background work to get it put into code. So it's a long-standing board rather than an ad hoc committee, which is what it's been for 10 years, which is pretty long for an ad hoc committee, so.
Interesting. All right. Thank you, City Clerk.
You're
Councillor
welcome.
Pierce and Councillor Gabriel. Councillor O'Doherty.
I'm just wondering, because we put a lot of our other basic infrastructure, like the stuff that the city's already doing, we want to show that, yes, this is important to us, and also give them a place to put what goal this meets. And so I keep thinking about the fish structure that allows fish, so that's something that Darren figured out, got money for. I mean, that's something that we value as a council. So I want to have something, some generic, like continue to manage the ranch for these conservation opportunities, something like that. I feel like we should give credit to the work that Darren just does and that we value it. And so it would be nice to capture just more than just the consumptive use, if that makes sense. And our city manager knows more about that.
Yeah, I think they're like a bunch, I mean, a huge number of different species fish will now be able to make, was it 27?
We've added 27 miles to the river.
Yeah, and it's adding so many different species into the Laramie River, or different parts of the Laramie River. I mean, that's huge. That's huge.
City Manager.
I have some language I wanted to read back to, but I wonder, when I listened to the end of your discussion, if you would like to add another goal in this section, or have it read this way. Initiate consumptive use focused long-term operational agreements for city-owned Monolith and Bath Ranch properties. And then I had tacked in, and continue to explore other community uses and conservation opportunities. But maybe those are two separate things, I don't know. Not the operational agreements for the properties, period. And then maybe it's a second goal that says continue to explore other community uses and conservation opportunities on the Bath and Monolith.
That works for me.
Okay.
Works for me.
All right. Good discussion, everybody. All right, any other, it's your last shot on the goals. We missed our first deadline, but we found our way to the second, so this is your deadline, council. It's coming back on the 7th. Of course, you can amend it and do whatever you want then, so this is all imaginary deadlines I'm making, but Councillor Shumway, did you have anything to add here at the end?
I did. I want to jump back to the first thing here on our goals, the larger scale solar projects. I serve on the board for Interfaith, and we were very interested in looking for a solar project for energy for the Interfaith building. And so, of course, we went to Rocky Mountain Power and the Blue Sky, hoping that they would fund this, but they steered me towards the city because the city has 3 solar projects, and I was very concerned when I heard how much of the ice rink, the recreation center, and the fire station, how little benefit that we get from solar power. And I'm not sure we have the space to have a large solar project until they become more efficient and more reliable, because I think it's like 5 to 15% at the recreation center and the ice arena.
Well, and Councillor, we are limited by state statute for how big our solar arrays can be.
That's what Rocky Mountain Power says. You can only do this so much. But somehow, before we get this great idea that we're going to lower our energy bills by 80%, I think we've got to probably set that on the back burner until we're turned loose by Rocky Mountain Power and the state legislature, because they have concerns about, are we going to resell it or whatever they have on limiting that. So that goal, I think we need to continue to look for solar and wind options, but not large scale at this time. I don't think that's feasible.
Councillor Doherty.
We had a proposal for the Sailor's Wind project on the ranch that was going to be a solar farm.
Good.
So large
Yeah.
scale.
That's been going, yeah, that's good.
And now there is a testing site there. So we're moving along compared to last year. Now they're actually Rocky Mountain Power, or there's a buyer for the power, and they've put out testing equipment on the ranch. So I think we're closer.
Councillor Richardson?
If we removed for larger scale, that doesn't preclude us from exploring larger scale projects. So continue energy efficiency efforts and explore potential solar projects on city-owned properties would allow us the freedom to do all of it, right? So if it makes sense to explore larger scale properties, sometime this year something miraculous happens and everything's great, or if there's already larger scale projects in place, we can continue with that. But just removing larger scale would kind of make it.
Councillor Richardson, that seems like a great compromise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well done. Any objection there? Councillor Shumway?
I do not object to the wind option at the Monmouth and Bath ranches. I don't think we're ready for the solar within the city. That's just because, everything I hear from Rocky Mountain Power, from all those people that have solar energy, it's great for smaller buildings, but it's not for recreation centers and things like that. When it is ready, I'm ready to go. But in the meantime, I don't think it's very efficient, especially if we have to pay for it. If we have to pay for the installation. Once we get the efficiency up, then it will, it won't have to be subsidized, and it can be something where it will truly be energy efficient.
Okay, Councillor, I sense a little bit of maybe lack of agreement on council, so let's not change this one. Let's bring it up at the next meeting, if that works for you. I think Councillor Richardson seemed agreeable, but whether or not we include solar as a goal, I sense that maybe the council doesn't agree with that. And so I think maybe we at least not enough for me to say right now we're going to change that with an imaginary straw poll here. So let's bring that up on the 7th for a moment in which we can vote. I think that's probably the wise way to do that. Does that work, council? Okay. All right, and that wraps up our goals, everybody. We got through it. We will then move on to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to the city council on any item? Raise your hand if you are on Zoom and wish to speak to the council. Okay, seeing none, we will close the public comment period. Council, we are adjourned. Good work, everybody.
Did you put your mic?